Hey, boys and girls, Doug Childs here. It's Warriors and Wildmen time, minus Rich. I don't know what he's doing again, way out in Indonesia. Hopefully he's getting into some Holy Ghost trouble. But speaking of Holy Ghost trouble, our next guest, Albin Sadar, author of the book, Obvious, Seeing the Evil That's in Plain Sight and frickin' doing something about it. He's here on Warriors and Wildmen. Albin, how you doing, big dog?
Oh, I'm doing great. You know, the editor, they kind of edited out the frickin' part of that title, but it's still seeing the evil that's in plain sight and doing something about it. Obvious. It's a book that encourages the believers and the saints out there. It has some fun stories. Even you, and it made it to the back of the book, even you gave me a great endorsement. If I could read this to start off the interview, it says, this fresh opus from Albin Sadar's comedic cranium is a prophetic exhortation to be a dynamic biblical force in the earth and not an evil assisting evangelical farce. So thank you, Doug, for
That's
obvious.
that's some incredible prose right there. Hey, man. Speaking of, I don't know if incredible prose is a apt way to describe Kamala in her interview with Dana Bash, but bro, that was. Did you watch it? First of all, did
Well, you know what? I watched the clips the next day because I had some family things to take care of
right?
last night, and it was like I'd rather be with the family than be with Kamala.
Oof.
Even she got Dana. Even she got Dana's name wrong. But
Yeah.
no, I didn't. I saw a lot of the clips though. I mean, it was only what, 18, 20 minutes all
Yeah.
told, edited.
Right. It was funny as CNN said, Kamala Harris in her first sit-down hour-long interview. It's like there were a crap ton of commercials in that. You know, it looked like a campaign video. The way that they introduced her, walking in slow motion,
Well,
waving at the big, AI crowds that are around her.
yeah, I heard from some of the pundits said that basically they were trying to Dana, or I should say Kamala's uh, court there. They were trying to put together clips that they could use in campaign ads. So that's why it was kind of like little snippets, if you will, 30-second or 2-second sound bites that can be used to make her look really, really good, right?
Bro, she didn't look like a president to me. She looked like a 15-year-old Baptist boy that got caught by his parents masturbating. I mean, she's sitting there, Alvin hunched over at the table.
Oh,
You
there's another word that's edited out of my book, obvious. No, but you know what? I got to tell you something, that Doug. I just recently saw your interview with my old pal and my old. I was his sidekick, Eric Metaxas, and you guys right away were saying something that I've been saying for a long time. She's not only the worst candidate in my lifetime, and I'm older than you guys. The worst candidate, just but in a sense, she's the worst person out there. She's just awful, and you called her Obama with breasts.
yeah.
And I thought that was, you know what, that kind of nailed it right there.
Yeah, it's really terrifying, man, to think that chick who Albin, I don't know if you had your Prevagen this morning. I have. I can remember 5 or 6 weeks ago, man, when the left was telling Biden, you got to ditch this broad, you got to get rid of her, or maybe it's, I don't know, 10 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago,
Yeah.
when they were sagging in the polls, Trump stars, ascending, and they were like, she is the thing that's killing, the vibe of the Democratic Party, and they were saying got to shed her, like a bad habit. And now all of a sudden, boom, the whole planet, America, is supposed to embrace her as some freaking zeitgeist, some political, true north star that's going to heal us. And there's even evangelicals, supposedly, Albin, for Harris. And again, last night, man, I hate to harp on it. I want to talk about your book, but dude, she looked so unpresidential. I mean, Tim Walz looked like a president. I mean,
Yeah.
Dana Bash, she looked like she could do the job.
Yeah.
And Kamala's just, doing this Quasimodo hunchback, scratching her face,
Yeah.
it just looking down at the table. And that's the chick that's going to lead our country and go toe to toe with Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong Un. And I wouldn't trust her to run the carnival Ferris wheel at this juncture. And it's some really scary stuff, Albin. When you look at the polls, and again, I'm not a big believer in polls, but even polls like Wall Street Journal, Fox News, they have her up a point, and you're like,
I know.
oh,
I really don't understand this. The thing that really baffles me, in all seriousness, she was a prosecutor. And if anybody, even if you just watch TV prosecutors, but if you see them in real life, man, they got an answer for everything. They go after you like a dog going after a bone. They get really in your face and they get all wound up. And I can't see her in the role of a prosecutor. Like if you were casting a show or something, I wouldn't cast her as a prosecutor. It doesn't make any sense. What you have to do in court all the time is debate. That's what it's about, and it's also having the facts right there at your fingertips, like like you are so confident and you are so sure. And yet here's somebody that flip flops, and here's somebody that has these word salads. That doesn't make sense to me. All I can figure is that this is DEI at its very worst. Now, Joe Biden picked her as his DEI candidate, and then what does she do? She turns around and gets Tim Walsh as her DEI candidate because she needs like an older white guy that's like what we're all used to, the dad figure, like the goofy dad figure, and so she needs that as a balancing act. But that just goes to show you how DEI doesn't work. Luther King, Reverend Martin Luther King, he told us way back, what is it, 60 years now? He said, it's not color of skin, it's content of character. It's merit. It's how you got there because there was something deep inside of you that makes you belong or is part of what the role that you're going to play, whether you're playing, whether you're playing an instrument or playing baseball, whatever the role is, you meet the challenge, you become that, so people see you in that role. And like you just said, she doesn't look like the role. She doesn't look like the role of vice president or a leader of any kind. And she's supposed to go up against the leaders of the the evil axis that's out there right now.
yeah, we're screwed, man.
Oh, man.
If she becomes president, I'm telling you what, that's a sign to old Dougie, old buddy, old pal,
Yeah.
that God is going to judge us so harshly, and it could go on, like he did with the children of Israel, man. It's like,
Well,
okay, you're not going to listen. You're going to turn a deaf ear. Then how about 40 years in the wilderness?
yeah.
How about I
Well,
send you to Babylon for 70 years? How you like
you
that? You
You
know?
pointed that out in your interview again with Eric Metaxas, Isaiah 3, and I just read it again right before coming on the air here with you, and about how God's going to put in charge children or women, or he's going to take those strong men because they're not leading, they're not getting out there, they're not doing the fight, and he's going to put perhaps a woman in charge. We don't know. We don't want to go that way. Well, we don't, you and I and the real evangelicals out there, we don't want to go that way. But as you guys, you and Eric and myself, we will exhort. You've got to pray, you got to fight. And when people say, "Oh, well, we're Christians, we don't want to get political," that there is a political statement. You sit down on the sidelines, you're saying yes to whatever happens, and you're the one that's going to have to suffer. And unfortunately, the rest of the men along with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when the Christian's like, I'm not into politics, neither's Jesus. And it's like, have you ever read First Kings and Second Kings?
Yeah.
It's all about politics. It's all about kings. It's all about leaders. You ever heard that righteousness and righteous leaders exalt the nation, and that the wicked, ooh, it's not good to have them in power? It's to me like I don't even know Christians like that anymore. And listen, I
Yeah.
get how repugnant politics is, but it's it is necessary. It's something that we have to impact. We have to speak to it. We got to be the Elijahs to the Jezebels and Ahab. We got to be prophetic, and like Moses, law give, and and you know try to give some semblance of the biblical worldview, some kind of policy legs, so that our planet gets blessed. And I don't get Christians who don't get that. And honestly, Alvin, I don't even think I have any of them in my life anymore that are that daft and that checked out of things. But before anybody posits you and I as this, this sexist anti-woman leader, I have no problem with Tulsi Gabbard. I have
No,
no problem with the likes of Megyn Kelly,
yeah,
somebody who's sharp, solid, and smart.
sure.
And Tulsi, bro, she's left of us, but she's not despicable. Like Kamala's despicable, and the more she, the more she, bebops and scats and and obfuscates. It's like I haven't changed my values. I've just changed my approach to policies. Like, whoa, whoa, lady, you just didn't have a value. You had an axe to grind. When you listen to her in 2016, 2019, 2020, 2022, brother, she's doing this Paul Bunyan, grinding on the whetstone, getting ready to chop conservatives' heads off. And now all of a sudden, we find out, Alvin, that she's evolved, that she has moved into her butterfly phase of healing the land. Go sell crazy somewhere else, lady. And here's
Well,
another thing, Album, and I gotta get your point of view on this. Here it is, like she's strong, she's bold, she's a woman in charge, she's Charlie's Angels. And in her first softball interview, she's got to frickin' bring Tim Walz, to sit by her like a guidance counselor, and kick her under the table when she starts, lying her butt off.
yeah, it's really amazing because I was just watching, the optics today. A lot of things are just optics, and the way they seated her. Now she's like 5 foot 1 inches tall. She's a petite woman, and this Tim Walz guy, I think he's a big guy. Well, you have him in the foreground, and you have Dana Bash over here,
Yeah,
also in the foreground, but he looks even bigger, right? So if there would have been a way to manipulate, and they could have done this, we all know camera angles and things like that. They could have put it that if somehow she would have been forward of Tim Walsh, he would have looked smaller, she would have looked bigger. There would have been a size thing going on there. But she
yeah,
looked like this, like a little kid in school. And the teachers have come in and said, "Now, what are you doing? Well, how did you pass your test? And did you cheat? Did you do this? Are you going to try to do better? You said this last week, and now you're saying this week. Which one is it? It optically, it did not
it's
look
horrible.
good.
No, it's spot on. I mean, I'm watching leftists on X right now. They're like yanking their hair out, and they said it was poorly lit. It didn't look presidential. There's no flag in the background. You got Kim's Cafe, on the window, and you got her, like I said, like a busted 15-year-old Baptist boy, or
Yeah.
or me, or be at my probation officer's meeting and stuff. She doesn't look like she's coming in, boom, Albin, ready to kick butt and take names.
Right. And what's funny
Like
when they,
if she came in like Robin Wright Penn,
yeah,
and what's that television show with her and Kevin Spacey? I, I mean, there's no authority. She looks like a drunk aunt.
yeah.
And it's scary, brother. I know I'm digging hard in the critiques of her, but this is flat out terrifying. Like I sat there and just like, please God, no. I'm sorry for my sins. I'm sorry for the nation's sins.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry for people who aren't born and their sins. Do not allow this to go down.
It's so funny too. She said, "I want to change things from where they began 10 years ago." And of course, if you do the math, 10 years from 2024 is 2014. That was Barack Obama. Now, what happened in 2015? That's when gay marriage began to rule the land. Okay. Now, she's right about all that because right before 2014, you didn't have all that craziness. And then, of course, you had a stay of execution for this country with 4 years of Donald Trump, right? And then you have 3.5. So most of the time that she is talking about 6 years of that is taken up by Democratic rule. So
Yeah.
what are you talking about? You want to what, you know? And then of course Dana fortunately said something about how, things seem to be a little better under Trump. You're talking about the 10 years here. So it wasn't totally softball. But again, she had what, about 2 or 3 weeks, just like Joe Biden had 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for his debate with Donald Trump. Then she has her whatever many weeks to get. Now, even if she wasn't handed the questions, what the questions are going to be. They're going to be the border, they're going to be the economy, they're going to be about the middle class, of course. So if you can't memorize even in a day a strong answer that's a solid 1 or 2 minutes that just kind of blows people away and says like, oh, now I know exactly what she's saying, where she stands. And yet she couldn't do that. She means, in many ways, she was worse than Biden because we didn't expect much from Biden. We expected a little more from her, but you still got into that little word salad, words rotating here and there like on a carousel from her. I have an article recently. It was at the Blaze about it's a remake. If you think about it, she's a remake of My Fair Lady. They took her away because she cackled too much. So you notice that she didn't have that last night. She was a little more dignified. She became like the Eliza Doolittle, but she's still more. She's still the Eliza Do Nothing of the last 3.5 years, and so she couldn't get beyond that. And then she got this Tim Walsh guy who's kind of like her Professor Henry Higgins, who's her sidekick. And it's just like a big show, but it's a really bad revival of My Fair Lady. She's more, like My Unfair Lady when you think about her policies and what she's going to do to this country.
Yeah, and as much as she's trying to distance herself from what she's already done, along with Sleepy Creepy Joe Biden, it's it's so funny, man, how she's just trying to distance herself from what she did, and what Biden has done. And thank God, like you said, Dana Bash said, well, things were pretty good under Trump. We had more money, gas is cheaper, food's cheaper. We're not in 15 wars, across the globe and stuff. And let's talk about Walsh for a little while, because I didn't even know this cat existed until what, 41 days ago. Knew nothing about him, man. And I won't say I'm a news hawk, but I'm try to stay dialed into what's going down. I think it's important as a believer to do that. But here he is, and Dana Bash, cornered him on one of his multiple lies. She said, "Yeah, you didn't carry a weapon of war into Afghanistan, but you said, during this interview about, the problem with firearms and scary black rifles that you did." And then he said, "Yeah, my wife says, she's an English teacher, and she said I don't speak too goodly or goodish. And anyway, don't make fun of my son." He didn't even answer the question, man. He just like, "Look, there's a squirrel." And Dana and Kamala turned that way. And that was plain as day, brother. That was
Yeah,
just
yeah. It's diversionary tactics. I have in my book a whole chapter about how the shiny object named Trump, because even she did that. If there's a problem, if something went wrong, but no, no, look at Trump. It was Trump. It was Trump. The economy, that was Trump. Yeah, yeah,
right.
the border, for heaven's sakes, that was Trump. Yeah, it's like that. That's the squirrel. Trump is the squirrel. If something's going crazy or haywire, it's Trump. No, it's Trump. Trump. Look over there. I love that, and I'm sure you've seen this new little commercial that came out from RFK's running mate. She put it. It's on her Twitter feed, where it's about Trump derangement syndrome, and it's all about every time they say Trump, people get scared and blah, 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 So anytime they get off the track of thinking like, well, maybe things were better 3.5 years ago, that they just have to say Trump and Trump, 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 even though it was Trump that made things better 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, there's a drug, right? It's at the drug commercial. It's like,
Yeah,
for those who have Trump derangement syndrome,
yeah.
take
I,
independence.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's independence, the new drug, independence. Think independently, or something like that. I
Tell you what, Albin, if Donald Trump started flip flopping um, like Kamala's doing, I'd shed him like a ski parka in Miami in
yeah,
mid August. I'm not that I don't have the mark of the Trump to where I'm just like I love Trump. Trump is my everything.
yeah,
He's saying and he's doing the right stuff. A lot of it is undergirded with the biblical gracious worldview that blesses everybody, and not just here in the United States of liberal acrimony, but also around the world. I mean,
yeah,
you look at the benevolence that springs forth out of America because of our Christian heritage. I think it's 97% of all the good stuff that goes on around this planet hails from this nation. And
yeah,
but if he was to depart, if he would start, I'll be his worst enemy. I'll tell you what, man.
yeah,
I'll turn my pen and my books and my podcast and everything against him because that's our privilege. That's our right as God's kids and American citizens. I don't get how people can, just be so, I don't know, man, absorbing of this garbage from Kamala and Walsh and CNN and not critically think.
yeah.
I mean, who's the guy who said the unexamined life is not worth living? Is that
Socrates, right?
yeah? So I mean, like, come on, people,
Well,
really? I mean, you look on Jesse Waters. Johnny's on the streets, on the beach. He goes and he'll put a mic. What do you find appealing about Kamala Harris? She has a vagina. What else? She's kind of creamy colored. What about her policies? I don't know what you're talking about. They have
yeah.
no idea. You know?
Well, you know what? You brought up a quote, I believe it was Socrates, about the unexamined life. In fact, it was. But on the back of my book, in fact, my book Obvious is a quote from George Orwell. But I found another quote from George Orwell. Yeah, there's my book Obvious. You'll have a lot of fun, by the way, a lot of cartoons and raised quotes and stuff like that. But here's a quote from George Orwell that is just nails it for today. George Orwell said, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." So what this party is doing, the Democrat Party is saying, like, don't worry about what's going on at the border, or don't worry about your groceries costing 30% more. Believe what we tell you, which is Trump is a bad guy. He's terrible. He's gonna get in there, and it's gonna be World War III all over again. Everything they told you Trump was going to do in the second term, it's as if Trump is already in the second term. We're on the verge of World War III. You know, we're on the verge of an economy that's collapsing. The stock market has been really hazy and funky and funny. And during Trump's days, we had peace. We didn't have an invasion in the Ukraine. We didn't have what's going on in Israel. That shameful episode on October 7th. There's another thing that's obvious who the bad guys are over there and what happened on October 7th. But nope, you've got people defending these horrible terrorists. I mean, the evil that they did is beyond some of the things you can't even describe it. You can't even say what they did. It's so beyond the pale, some of the evil they did on that day on October 7th. But there's still people out there saying, like, yeah, no, what? Israel, the Jews, they're the ones. And Christians, oh my goodness. That's the thing. We live in a day now, Doug, that if Kamala was running, and again, if she was running 10 years ago, she wouldn't have made it, and she didn't first pass that first. She didn't make it to Iowa, as Donald Trump keeps pointing out, and yet she's making it to being 1 or 2% ahead or behind in the polls. Really? Well, we know what happened 4 years ago when they kept saying, "Oh, it's so close, it's so close, it's so close, it's so close." So then they took those 6 swing states, and man, they couldn't get Biden enough votes on day one. They had to do day two. Couldn't do it. Day three, okay, we're getting there. Day four, yes, we got about half a point, maybe 1 point ahead in those swing states. We did it. And there's people still out there saying, like, no, they didn't steal the election. No, that was a solid election. That was the best election of my lifetime. It was so fair and so honest. There's still people doing that. What is going on here?
Yeah, I think the majority of Americans know that she's a kook, that that has nothing to do with democracy. I didn't run for president in 2020, and and I came in about as solid as she did in that race. And I think it's the whole gaslighting is from the East Coast and the left coast. It's from CNN and MSNBC and their droogies. I think and Don Lemon, man, he proved it. He's walking around Cincinnati the other day, and he's walking up to black people, Albin, and
Yeah,
he's like, "Are you going to vote, for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Trump, 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 Trump." I don't know if you saw this interview where he
yeah,
climbed back on one of those unwatched cable shows, and he told them to their face, they're
yeah.
done with Biden and Harris. They don't. They're not remotely appealed to by what they've done to this country the last 3.5 years. And so I'm forever optimistically hopeful, Albin, because I'm a post millennial and I believe that Jesus rules in time and eternity. Doesn't mean that we could have a big butt whooping coming soon, but I think barring a deep rigged election, I don't believe the polls. I think Trump's going to trounce her. I think we're going to see blue states flip, and all those battleground states and districts. I think they're going to go Trump. I
Yeah,
just
my biggest fear, and I actually brought this up a couple months ago in an email to one of the guys that edits my articles for, actually, this was for the stream.org. I had an idea, and it's a terrible idea, and it's so stupid of an idea. He didn't even respond to it, but it could possibly happen, and I'm going to probably write an article about this. But you know how they took a Joe Biden who sat in a a bunker and didn't do had circles if he did a speech at all. He had 12 people, and half of them were his team, and the other half were press. And suddenly, somehow, he got 81 million votes. And of course, it was so obvious, just like my book, and I have a whole section on the stolen election. I have at least 12 things that are so obvious about the stolen election. You can't look at it and say, like, oh, no, 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 I think I can debate that. No, you can't. But here's the thing. They found 81 million votes. They found them or they created them and, were able to put them into the machine or whatever they did. But they got 81 million votes for Joe Biden, who everybody knows he didn't campaign, he wasn't popular, so how did he get it? What if they decide, let's go the other way this time? Let's go with Donald Trump. We know we can't beat him. We know that he's going to win. We know he probably will win in a landslide. Well, what if we make it more of a landslide than it should be? What if we can, because we can hack these things. It's shown in a movie called Kill Chain, which the Democrats put out in 2020, the spring of 2020, Kill Chain. They showed how you can hack the machines. What if we do more votes than he would get? And then we can say, hey, wait a minute, he got 90 million votes. That's not possible. Then we better check these machines. So, and then of course they will check the machines because they're in charge of everything. They'll check the machines and see the machines were hacked. That's how we got all these votes. He's not the president. This can't be. They'll just hack it the other way, and then of course the press will be all over it, saying like, "Look at that! The Russians did influence. They did hack those machines." And now we know that Trump has stolen the election because they never looked into the machines. Even when they said that Trump stole it in 2016 from Hillary, why didn't they look into the machines back then? You know why? And this is in my book, obvious, because if they would have been showing the public that they themselves had kind of hacked and tried to tweak and tried, but they just didn't do it big enough. That's why in 2020 they did the same thing, but it took them 4 days because Trump had been even more popular in 2020 than he wasn't. So I'm afraid they're going to go the other way because people aren't looking that way. They're looking that, oh, they're going to keep doing it for Harris, for Kamala. They can't. It's too big this time. It's too big to rig, as Donald Trump said, except if they rig it the other way and say, oh, Donald Trump, nobody gets 100 million votes. That's not possible. Let's look into those machines. They've been hacked.
oh,
And,
that's coming. I guarantee. And
so,
yeah,
and then we're going to have such, oh my goodness, what's coming this way. But I'll tell you something, Doug. in my prayer time, I pray that God will do miracles like we've never seen them before. And of course, during that time, and they were fasting, what it was in the state of Tennessee, fasting and praying for the whole month.
Yeah.
Trump literally dodged a bullet. That was a miracle. That was an absolute miracle. We all know that. And what the only thing we can do is fast, pray, and pray that God will do other miracles. And on election day, that even God, God can outsmart the Democrats because
Yep.
they got evil on their side. But we do have the God who loves us, who's still involved, and I like to think that he's still got plans for America. He still
Yep.
wants us to be a shining city on the hill. And so what if Donald Trump's imperfect? You're imperfect. I'm imperfect. Donald Trump, I got, I don't want sins coming out of my closet, but they'll put his sins everywhere and every, whatever. And then Christians will say like, oh, well, I can't. Oh, he was married 3 times. Oh, he tweets. Oh, those mean tweets. A mean tweet. And yet if I could quickly get the pro-life issue, because there were pro-lifers saying like now he's backing down and all. He gave the pro-life movement the biggest gift you could ever give them. Each state now decides. So in your state as a pro-life person, why don't you fight, fight,
Get
fight?
busy. Yeah.
Wait, who else is going to overturn Roe versus Wade? That was one of those miracles that nobody thought would ever happen, and it happened. And now pro-lifers are complaining. Well, he's saying only in the life of the mother and the this and the that. But that, my goodness, that was the stance 20 years ago with the Democrats. Life of the mother, Bill Clinton, life of the mother, incest, rape, those kinds of things. Please give me a break. Okay, then go with Kamala. I'll go with Kamala. Live birth abortion. You like that? Well, why not you have it? Or well, they're going to make it. Supreme Court says, okay, abortions across the land, everybody, everywhere. They're going to go back to Roe versus Wade. And then you're going to say like, oh, I wish we didn't have another Roe versus Wade. I'm going to march in Washington every year. Boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't get the Kamala voters. I don't get Christians that are just as you described them. They're like, oh, he's backing off abortion. It's like he completely crushed it and sent it back to the states.
Yeah.
Okay, and like you said, if you want to do something, then Dinky, you get busy and shore up your state in regards to honoring this thing called the life of the unborn. Hey, before we skedaddle, man, uh, I got to talk about this with Walls because he said and he didn't just say it once or twice, Albin. He said on multiple occasions, "When I fought in the war as a command sergeant major, I was in the sea and the sea was angry." And then another interview, and he's throwing out these titles, and he wasn't. And again, he's like, oh, my wife says sometimes I get a little loop-de-loo in regards to my grammar. No, that's a bald-faced lie. That's like me saying, welcome to Warriors and Wildmen. I am General Doug Giles, who fought in Iwo Jima. It's like, that's delusional, crazy crap. Did you not think that we have this thing called Google, that we can actually find out stuff,
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense because stolen valor is one of the worst things. People are like racist, racist, racist. Well, then whatever. Stolen valor is that's a bad one. That's a really bad one. And you know how they're trying to take this military thing where Trump goes to for the Afghanistan withdrawal, and they're making it like, oh, Trump, and oh my goodness. They're making that like that's some big deal when the families, they wanted somebody who was like presidential to acknowledge that their sons and daughters, they died in vain, not in vain, because when you're in the military, you don't die in vain, but you are honored for being there. And they were lambs to the slaughter is what is very sad about all this. And Donald Trump goes there as an ex-president. He goes there the way they never admitted to this sort of thing. So you got a stolen valor, Tim Walsh. You got a Kamala who was on board with what happened over there in this Afghanistan withdrawal, and you got two of the biggest losers again, it's obvious. It's obvious that they're the biggest losers, right? And then and then yet there's people, and yet we're supposed to believe the polls are that close. In other words, we're supposed to believe that Americans don't see this obvious stuff. We're supposed to believe, yeah, you know what? Yeah, she can be commander in chief, and that guy, he can be the vice president a heartbeat away. Of course they can. Of course, not Donald Trump. Mean tweets.
Yeah, I'll take mean tweets and save streets over those two clowns. I don't know if you were watching Jesse last night, but Jesse's researching into Kamala Harris, uh, whether or not she actually worked at McDonald's because she's cackling. You know, she went to a fast food restaurant. Oh, I worked at McDonald's and I was a fry cook. And oh, I remember it's such an incredible experience. No record. And McDonald's has, this incredible archive of every single employee that ever drew a paycheck from Ronald's house.
You
And
know
there's
what?
there's no
That's
Kamala Harris. Period.
stolen Big Mac valor.
There you go.
Oh my God, that's even
That's a
bigger.
column right there, brother.
Yeah, you got to call them with fries.
Yeah,
Oh,
and again, it's just BS. It's like this is such unnecessary. You don't have to lie that. You've
yeah.
already got a stack of lies. It's hard to memorize all the ones that you got floating out there. But also, she was telling all the when she's around black crowds. Yeah, I'm from the mean streets of Oakland. I grew up there.
Yeah.
I cut my teeth. At swinging chains and bringing switchblades and just grunting out an existence. But I rose to the and she moved to Oakland in her 20s. Okay,
Yeah.
lived in Berkeley and in Canada all the way up until her 20s. Then she moved. It's
Yeah.
Albin. It's just
I know. And you talk about tough guys. I love it when Elon Musk said, it was when he was almost killed. And when Donald Trump got up and said, fight, 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 he said that came from the inside. That wasn't like, I'm going to plan this. And keep this in mind. There are still people that think that Donald Trump set that up. Now think about this. Think about this real hard. Actually, you don't have to think about real hard because it's obvious. Okay, think about this. So Trump says to the shooter ahead of time, "Now I want you to just nip me in the ear, okay? Because if you don't want to hit me in the head, you'll kill me. But I want you to nip me in the ear. Now I'm going to be standing there and I'm going to be moving around a little bit. But you're a good shooter. You've been at the range, a half a dozen times. You're pretty good at this, kid. Okay, so I want you to just nip me in the ear." See, if it was me setting this up, I'd say, look, I'm wearing a bulletproof vest. At some point, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to stay still, and you're going to shoot me in the bulletproof vest. And they'll look like, whoa, they tried to shoot Trump in the heart. No, I want my head just to nip me. And they did it. They did it. They set it up, and Trump got all the sympathy, and that he's such a bad guy. And then he gets up. How dare he say fight, fight, fight when he's really a coward, a coward, a coward. Oh my goodness.
yeah. It's some silly Dane Bramage, man. That's the only way that you can explain their mendacity in trying to make sense of the golden comb over. I'm talking number 45. Alvin, we're out of time.
Oh man.
I want you to give a good shout out and plug to your books, your columns, and where people can find all things Albin Sadar related.
Well, you could go to both ends of the scale for me because I have a whole series from Simon and Schuster of hamster homes. It's a box of mysteries. You can get all 8 mysteries from Simon and Schuster, hamster homes. But obvious is the one I really want everybody to get because it's going to encourage you. It's like Doug's books. They don't just say, they're not just full of scripture like mine is, and they're not just full of exhortations and all that. You leave encouraged. You leave saying like, you know what, there's still hope for me and for my family and for America. And I've got jokes in here. I've got the short chapters, 66 short chapters. I've got great endorsements like Kevin Sorbo, Victoria Jackson, Eric Metaxas wrote the forward. So it's obvious. It's obvious you need this book, and you'll have a lot of fun. And it also just helps us and encourages us to know like, hey, somebody bought my book. But I thank you, Doug. Doug, it's always great to be on with you, and I just love being on with Warriors, and And Wildmen, and you're the warrior, and the wild man, and I'm I'm holding you up a little bit here, and I'm trying to do my bit as well, as the Brits say. Do your bit.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you as a co-belligerent in the fight against all things unholy, unjust, and ungood. And I can't recommend your book more than you just did. But it's a compendium, ladies and gentlemen. It's like he says, 66 chapters, and it touches on everything, and it does it with a smile and defiance. And that's why I love having you on the show, Albin. Thanks, big dog. Have a good weekend, and yeah,
Like you say, stay rowdy, Doug.
must stay rowdy. It's the vibe of the moment for us, brother.